Hello, and welcome to Why I Love Warhammer, the series where I go into an unscripted ramble about why I love something in this hobby. And today, on our painting and chat stream, we're going to paint up more of the Immolator from the Sisters of Battle range, the dream come true model for me. It's not going to be as complex or involved as the stained glass window that we painted up last time. I'm also hoping that we've fixed up the delay, so we should only have like a 1 second delay now. So going to do a few steps. I've got, broadly speaking, the colors involved of the chassis. We've got golds, silvers, reds, whites, and like a little bit of skin tone, a little bit of wood. So it's not a significant. It's not a huge amount of coloration. Most of the color from this, most of the color from this model comes from that stained glass window we did last week. So I'm actually going to do things in a slightly weird order because I'm going to start with the decals. And the decals are phenomenal for letting you put detail onto a model that you'd find tricky to freehand. Normally, I do a decal last, right? It makes sense, right? Kind of, you do them after you've finished up painting the rest. But for this model specifically, I feel like it makes a degree of sense to put them on first to bring color into the model from the get-go. That's a slightly unfortunate angle for my hand, but we can already see that it's brought that little symbol very nicely up. And maybe there's a proper technique to use decals, but I tend to just dunk the whole thing in water, put that on my finger, and then transfer onto the model. And then I can use a wet paintbrush with no paint on it to move it around as needed. That's two. And then the box art has a third decal here. I cut these decals out before the stream because it took quite a while to actually get that in order, get the decals sorted, and I didn't want to faff with that on stream. I always feel like these decals would actually make a really cool temporary tattoos, because they work the same way as temporary tattoos. There we are, and just water to affix it in place. There we are. So much needed detail onto the model. Next thing we're doing, silver. So here I have some lead belcher base. And this is going to be going onto the tracks, this thing at the front, and then just like bits around the sides. So I load up my brush. We start with the areas that need the densest amount of silver on them. And we go to town. Put some onto my little Tupperware lid of a palette. And again, I want the focus of the model to be that beautiful stained glass. So I'm going for muted tones. So I'm using lead belcher for the silver rather than like rune fang steel, which is a far brighter color. So next place for silver is going to be the other silver parts, guns, the tracks, some bits of armor, the side decorations. First, let's get these side bits nicely coated. So these little step ladder things to climbing into the model. Okay, there we are. There we are. Some nice silver onto them. So next, let's do the tank treads. Get more silver onto the palette. And let's begin. Ideally, we do the tank treads as early in the process as reasonable, because to do so otherwise, because it gives them like maximum drying time, basically. Very sorry, screen chat, although no one's watching right now. I'm just going to check what the buzzing is about. Okay. Yeah, so kind of you've got to give the paint the maximum drying time, because that's going to be sat back down again. and all that goodness, all that good stuff. And it's also important to remember that some parts of the model get seen more than other parts. That's always a thing when you're doing miniature painting. So some bits, so like the bottoms of the model, they're not going to be seen very much. The insides, never. No one looks at the inside of a model. That's where you can paint stuff that's just for you, or not painted at all. Normally, I don't paint the insides of the model at all. I did for my Cerastus Knight Lancer, but that's because I had a cool idea for it, and I kind of treat it like a secret. It's kind of, that's just there for me to know about. If I bring it to a game, no one's going to notice it, but it's there. It's just a nice little thing. And that's what the inside is good for. Painting the inside of a model is great for those little secret bits that are just for you. Because at the end of the day, right, you're not painting to, like, unless you're an Instagram painter, you're not painting to kind of impress people, right? You paint so that you feel good about yourself. You relax. You have a painted army. You have painted models. You try out a new skill. You get better than you were previously. You try out a new technique. That's why you paint. So, yeah, be a bit easier on yourself. Don't stress. This is a relaxing hobby. I started this YouTube channel to relax and keep myself out of my own head while I was between jobs. Between last stream and this stream, I've sent off my contract for a job I'll be starting at the end of April, so that's lovely. But yeah, this is what I do to relax. It's like this and looking up pictures of frogs. It's kind of funny that I paint Warhammer to relax. Warhammer is the grim, dark setting. Everything's really kind of everything is very, very grim. The origin of the term grim dark in popular consciousness. That's what I do to relax. When I'm doing something hardcore, that's Stardew Valley. That's the farm sim cozy game. That's where I've got spreadsheets up of what to do and when and how to achieve absolute perfection. So yeah, war games to relax, cozy farming sims for a hardcore experience. The one thing that I do find is painting for camera is very different to just painting for yourself. Kind of where you hold the model changes, how you approach it changes, and trying to talk throughout is an interesting challenge. It's fun. The other nice thing with painting on stream is it gives me a dedicated time to paint, and I don't feel like I'm being cheeky or taking time away from other stuff. It's kind of a productive reason to paint. And it's fun, you know? It's fun to paint. It's fun to de-stress. And hello, viewer. Get some tissue here just to clean my brush in between, just dry it off a bit. So for those just joining, the thing we're painting today is the Immolator from the Sisters of Battle range of Warhammer 40,000. Just going to put just behind is the painted version that comes from the box. You'll notice that what I'm painting here doesn't have the stained glass window because that is what we were painting up last week. Keeping it nice and transparent so with our paint so that it shines through like a real stained glass window. So then we get the next bit of silver. The next bit of silver looks to me, we've got guns, side filigree. Yeah, guns and side filigree. That's what's in silver. So let's get some more paint on our brush, onto the palette. Normally, I go straight from the pot. I think I've said that in previous streams that I'm normally someone who gets paint straight from the pot and puts it on the model. But this paint, this lead belcher paint, is starting to dry up a bit. So I'm putting it on the palette to control how thin it is, basically. So let's hit the guns. Now, what I'm going to do for the guns is initially I'm just going to cover the entire gun from here, so from here to the end in silver. That way, when it dries, we've got a good base to do the gold. Is one thing you do learn in this hobby. It's that sense of painting colors on top of other colors, how best to approach it. And yeah, what color is a base color is more important than you initially might give stuff credit for being. That's why painting white on black is so painful, because you need a base. You need a light base, but you've started with the darkest possible base. And debatably, there's an argument to actually spray paint the model white to begin with and then use contrast Black Legion over the whole thing. One thing that's quite really rewarding actually with miniature painting is just seeing it slowly come to life. And you start out with a silver blob, with like a grey blob of plastic, you do the undercoat, which fills it with a bit more life and vibrancy, and then as you add color bit by bit, you really feel it come together. And I feel like there aren't too many hobbies like that out there. It's only, miniature wargaming is the only one I'm really aware of where you get that feeling of seeing your creation come to life. In case you're wondering how long it takes Citadel paint to dry, you've seen me. I started the stream 22 minutes ago, near enough. I painted the silver tracks on screen, and now it's dry enough to place down onto my desk. So I love the tackiness of Citadel paints for exactly that reason. They dry quickly, and you can carry on and move on with details. Also, just realised my light isn't on. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Then we've got more of these side bits that are also silver. So yeah, what are you guys working on at the moment? Like, are you working on something brand new? Are you carrying on with something you've started? What faction? What system? Is it Games Workshop? It doesn't have to be. There's a lot more to miniature wargaming than one company. I mean, this channel's one company only, but it doesn't have to be. It is, and you don't have to be limited to one company. It's a vast hobby world out there. Hello. And I believe my other half is watching the stream. So hello, welcome. Today we are painting up the Sisters of Battle Immolator and Evening Richie 448. Richie is one of our members here on the channel, and the episode of Why I Love that comes out tomorrow is actually a bit of a shout out to him specifically. It is the Uruk War Clan, specifically the Cruel Boys. That was fun to do because they're such a fun range. I love their beasts. They've got really cool beasts as well as being cool on their own merits. Tonight it's going all right. it's been a strange day a bit for me. I've been spending most of the day doing driving practice because I am 30 years old and can't pass my driving test to save my life. So yeah, it's going to be, tomorrow's episode. It's Crawl Boys, because there's a fun range that I think I didn't really give enough credit to when they were first revealed. It just felt like more orcs, but the more I got to see the range, the more it was expanded, the more beautiful I found them all to be. It's always the way, isn't it? Life gets in the way of your gaming. Like I think I've played a total of 2. Well, depends on how you want to count it. So I've had one day where I played 2 games, one of Age of Sigmar, one of 40k, near the start of 10th edition, and another day where I went into the Games Workshop store and played a couple of games. So depending on how you want to count it, I've had 2, maybe 4 games in the last year, and it's exactly that. Life gets in the way. It's very frustrating that it does, but yeah, it does. Oh yeah, the Crawl Boys getting buffs, true. But I will say, as a Necron player, what's that like? So you raised a good point about viability, actually. So it's lovely when things are viable, but it's something I just rarely talk about because viability just becomes such swings and roundabouts. Taking a big swig of tea there. So we do need to set up a game. Kind of whatever system, because it's gonna be it's a fun. Oh God, it's such a fun game to actually sit down and play with people. And it's fun to be really narrative about it as well, to just go and just play whatever. Points are a good starting place, don't get me wrong. But yeah, narratives where I feel like you can have a lot of fun with the game. So Sisters of Battle, this thing here, do you reckon 4th edition will come this year? Not only do I think 4th edition is going to come this year, I think they are going to announce 4th edition in 9 hours. So at 3 a.m. is the Warhammer 40k. Well, it's the Games Workshop Adepticon reveal stream. I would love to stay up for it, but I'm due to do some driving practice tomorrow, so I can't afford to be that tired. But they gave the promo, had the tagline Sigmar lied, and combine that with the kind of length of time 3rd edition's been out, there's little doubt in my mind that they're going to announce 4th edition. So yeah, it's this incredibly short video. Oh, predictions. So my prediction is that the starter set, and by extension the core of the story, is actually going to be the Ossiarch Bone Reapers versus the Stormcast Eternals. Stormcast Eternals are still very much the poster boys for Age of Sigmar, so they're always going to be in that starter set. But their little prediction hint thing looked very much like an Ossiarch Bone Reaper's dog, which I found cute, but I fully appreciate wouldn't be to everyone's sense of cuteness. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be Ossiarch Bone Reapers versus the Stormcast Eternals. I think that it's going to be... I also think they're going to announce it last because it's the new edition. I think they're actually going to have 40k announced a bit earlier. Then we're going to get... then we're going to get stuff for the skirmish games. They said they'll have a couple of teasers for Necromunda. I genuinely think it's going to start out with a Middle-earth announcement. I feel like they're really going a bit more ham on Middle-earth, which I'm very happy about. I love the Middle-earth game. And I've been trying to get people into the Middle-earth game. Like, if you're not already into the game, if you're not into miniature wargaming, but if someone's not into miniature wargaming, but you're trying to get them into it, into like a Games Workshop game specifically, Middle-earth has the IP to really hook people in. And then, of course, once they get a taste for it, they're going to want more. I don't know what they're going to announce for the Middle-earth strategy battle game. I have a feeling it might coincide with Rings of Power, which wouldn't be my first choice, but I feel like there's only so much more they could realistically milk. I mean, they've got 2 entire ranges of the Men of Rune and Khan, and the Men of Khan have like a single line in the books. The Varings of Khan, like there was a white dwarf from... What's what comes with... Okay, so rule changes are weird. Sometimes they change the rules drastically, but not always. So if we take games like... Okay, if we take Kill Team as a basis, right, for what a new edition looks like, Kill Team 2nd edition didn't feel substantially different to me from Kill Team 1st edition. Rightly or wrongly, that's how it felt. But Kill Team 3rd edition was a huge departure with a radically different way character sheets were set up, the way that lists were built, movement changed. It was a huge change when they did Kill Team 3rd edition. Same thing with 40k. Between the 7th to 8th edition was quite a change. 8th to 9th didn't feel like such a significant change. But then 9th to 10th was a fairly decent change. So I can't see them changing... Actually, no. So 1st edition Age of Sigmar was an incredibly different beast. There were no points. And literally any model could be your general. 2nd to 3rd, there wasn't a huge change. Which actually, so now I'm saying this out loud. Yeah, I'm anticipating some pretty significant rule changes. Hopefully we get some kind of like index for the models to say, this is what they do now, wait for your official one. But yeah, you get rule changes, army updates. If you play one of the newer armies, you should be pretty safe from some too huge changes. Games Workshop tend not to do like the rotation system you get in, say, trading card games. But yeah, you get rule changes, new list building rules. There might be new alliances that either are or are not allowed. It's yeah, it's a trying to think of other stuff that comes with a new edition. New lore, that's the other big one. New editions come with new lore because they tell new stories because they've got new opponents, right? So there was a huge expansion of the Uruk war clans and the cruel boys and stuff in the in 3rd edition Age of Sigmar. So if I'm right in it being Ossiarch Bone Reapers next, then we should get a pretty decent expansion of their lore. Just looking for some more side filigree. Okay, so we've got these bits here. So just for a bit of context when it comes to painting Warhammer, been streaming now for about 35 minutes, and so far I have done decals and a color. That is the reality of this hobby. If you're painting a vehicle, you can spend the best part of an hour painting a single color. I genuinely thought I'd actually do a lot more than just silver today, but I can fully fathom basically doing kind of silver. So I can do silver and red. I think I'll be very content with my... Oh, might solidify your next choice of army if they release some cool looking packs. Yeah, it's always the way. I think the thing to balance is that the first armies to come out they'll be subject to codex creep or war battle tome creep, where the stuff that comes out first gets comparatively weaker across the edition. So I'm always I always like it when my armies are the ones that get their battle tomes kind of halfway through the edition. It's the kind of the best balance in my view. Okay, so I believe... Oh, no, not quite. It's not quite all the silver sorted. So much like I did with the guns, these 4 braziers around the side, I'm going to do all silver so that the gold will look better when I get to do the gold. I kind of get the feeling that gold's going to be next week. So yeah, okay, I guess that's the next question. What will be your second army? All things being equal, what will be your choice for a second army? Because I feel like my choice for a second army would either be the Seraphon, the Lizard Men, or Uruk War clans, specifically the Gore Grunters, because they are orcs riding pigs. But do you tend to do bases and terrain painting? So more so bases are a recent thing I've started doing, and my basic technique for doing bases is I paint the entire base in the contrast paint orc flesh, because it's a really lovely green, and it means that any paint that's kind of dripped onto the base from the rest of the model just adds a bit of texture and tone to it. And then I use a little bit of Valhallan Blizzard, the technical paint, to add some snow. And if I'm feeling fancy, what I'll do is get some clean, emphasis clean, cat litter and use it for rocks. Thankfully, I've got cats, so I'm not asking someone for cat litter for that purpose. the Anvil Guard for the city. I've looked into that as a range a few times actually for the cities of Sigmar. The Manticore, the Lady on the Manticore, is one of my favorite Age of Sigmar releases they've done in a long time. I think for me personally, if I was to do a second Age of Sigmar army, I guess there are a couple of ways I could do it. Because there's kind of what's my motivation, right? Am I getting this for me just to be an army I enjoy? In which case, I'd get the Gore Grunters. Swap base of Sterling Mud, Uruk placed in a layer of Nurgle Rot. Ooh. Yeah. Litter. So the credit for the litter idea comes from a channel called Tabletop Minions. The presenter, a guy called Uncle Atom, does really good hobby techniques. Discovered his channel actually during the first lockdown, and I'd have his videos on in the background while I was at work. And I remember because Animal Crossing was all the rage at that point, the notion actually this advice also works for decorating your Animal Crossing island. But his idea was cat litter. Because yeah, it just makes for really good sized rocks. Yeah, Sterling Mud's a good one. They use that a lot in the kind of official guides for painting and bases. The other thing you can do is get some wood chips, right? Get wood chips and smother the base of your model in PVA glue. Douse it in the wood chips and then take it out of the wood chips. And then you've got wood chips all over your base. Seal it with a varnish spray. Ideally a matte one, unless you want that specific glossy look. And then, yeah, call it a day with your basing. That's another way of doing it really easily. One I did for my Lord of the Rings model was for some of my Lord of the Rings range, was to take was to paint the base Caliban green entirely, and then while the paint was still wet, to dip the entire thing into some like model railway grass, and that led to a really lovely layer of grass that looked like a field. Yeah, dried bark. The other one that you can do is like a child's play sand, because that's really fine, and that works very well for basing. Terrain, I want to get into more, because terrain is its own beast, and when you're kind of looking for stuff to paint, because it's fun, but you don't really have the money for models, that's a really good way of filling the void. It's also a nice thing to do to take a break if you want to keep hobbying, but you're feeling a bit burnt out on models. Yeah, it's just another way of going about it. So terrain is fun though. But I painted a bit of terrain in my time, and that is always good fun to paint up. You don't realize when you start a project like this just how much silver is going to be involved. It's a good thing I play Necrons, because it makes me used to silver as a paint. Not all of this is going to stay silver, obviously. So some of this silver is being used as a base for what will then be a gold layer. But I feel like that gold is going to be a thing we do next stream. But no, with basing, I tend to go very minimalist, because I mean, it used to be a requirement that something be based, but it doesn't feel like a significant part of the experience. And frustratingly, I find that it can often take you out of the experience more than playing against a grey army, because if someone's not painted their army, whatever, right? they've not got around to it. Life gets in the way. But if I wanted to try and role play what this battle is, and my guys are all based up to be grassland, and mine are tend to be based up to be like the first snow melt. And if my opponent has, Martian land, and or they've got, or like they're fighting against someone who's got a kind of earth like mud, or straight up snow, or kind of hay fields, that doesn't feel like a cohesive battle to me. Like, I'd be very happy if they said, "Oh yeah, basing is not actually a requirement anymore. If you want to base it, feel free. If you feel that adds something," but that would be, I'd be very happy about that attitude. The other thing that's interesting about basing actually is different parts of the company have different attitudes towards it. So generally just using other kits, right? So if you follow any of their official online tutorials, it's all, "Oh, why don't you use this? Why don't you use that we sell?" But if you're like me and you have a subscription to White Dwarf, I got this for Christmas, actually, as a subscription. There's a tutorial in here that actually says use model railway stuff. So yeah, there's a bit of a dissonance between the part of the company that does the videos and online materials versus the part of the company that does the physical materials. So gonna paint up. So there's this cherub thing on top. Now, lore-wise, cherubs are terrifying. They are like servitor babies. So yeah, servitor, if you're unaware, for the uninitiated or ignorant, servitor is like the mind and soul of the person, but put into a machine. So they're kind of constantly awake, constantly laboring, but without their own muscles. It's kind of like a punishment if you're not a good enough servant of the Imperium, right? And at least for a while in lore, these cherubs were like babies and children turned into servitors, which is quite possibly the darkest thing in the universe of Warhammer 40k. I think they retconned that though, because let's face it, there's dark and there's dark. And yeah, servitor babies might be a stretch too far. Yeah, it is fucked up. It's a messed up universe, 40k, right? And that's kind of the point. It's kind of beyond the point of parody. It's kind of, the most extreme kind of religious, kind of theocratic empire possible. But right, the thing is, and I always say this, is you don't want an actually good and wholesome faction.
in this universe. At least I don't. Because if someone's playing, like if I'm fighting against someone who are the outright good guys, then like narratively I want them to win. But if everyone's awful, then I have no qualms with wanting to fire them off the table. So it's kind of nice to be able to argue anyone's the protagonist and anyone's the villain. At least that helps with my immersion. But it's nice that humans aren't the kind of de facto heroes. I'll be honest, I really hate painting skin tones. So I'm glad there's not that much skin on the day. Do I have a favorite side? Ooh, favorite side. Okay. So let's break this down by game system. So in 40k, I've got 2 Chaos armies, 3 Xenos armies, 1, 2, 3, 4 Imperial. 4 numbers, I side a little bit more with the Imperium of Man. However, I would argue that I'm not one of those Imperial armies is meant to be a Xenos army. One is a Chaos army first. So I guess marginally Xenos over Chaos, and then Imperium. In Age of Sigmar, Grand Alliance Chaos again has more of my favorite models, but Grand Alliance Destruction is the one where I've had most fantasy armies for myself. Blood Bowl, I like everyone equally. And then, yeah, kind of a Lord of the Rings, as much as I root for the heroes when I watch the films or read the book, in the tabletop miniatures game, I very much prefer playing the evil guys. Prefer playing the forces of evil. And then in Warhammer the Old World, I, weird enough, because of just how cool I think specific models are, I find myself siding a little bit more with your Empire of Man Bretonnia models, just because I think the models are cooler. That's not about lore, that's just about which side's got the models I like the most. Which isn't the most sound reasoning in the world, but it's mine. Yeah, they've got cool horses, basically. I tend to find in most games I end up liking skeleton warriors. You know, very much a fan of skeleton warriors. Okay. Time to tidy up some silver. So what I just did there was a little bit of Gore Grunter brown for the wood paneling. So I'm going to get that this lead belcher back just to go over that silver a little bit again. Okay, so we've got gold, red, and white to go on this model. There's a bit less gold than there is silver. There's not all that much red. So hopefully next week we can actually finish this guy off, and the dream come true model will be present. So yeah, we've been going for about an hour now, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. And I hope that you've been able to paint with me if possible, so that you can kind of so that we can get through our backlogs of models together. With that, I will see you next time, and I hope you're all having a really good day.